So now take a deep breath and let it out. And remember what it must have been like. What it must have been like in the stable. No distractions. They didn't make it into the inn. And that's good because there's too many distractions in the inn. So take all your pieces of paper and all your distractions and let them go and open your hands. And create in the palms of your hands that manger scene, that stable scene. And take a deep breath and let it out. And in your open and empty palms, place your imagined scene there with all that's contained. And let go of everything that's in your hands. Just let it go. And let go of everything in your mind. And let go of everything that you're holding on to. And take another deep breath and let it out. And this is the empty space, the open space, the receptive space. They think maybe it was a cave, a stable that was carved out of the side of a cliff. It's open. There are no distractions. If you want distractions, you need to go into the inn. Let go of your distractions and move into this space and feel this presence in your open palms. There's no other place to go. You think that the inn has even rejected you or pushed you out when situations in your life aren't to your liking. But you're really being invited inward, into a place of receptivity and openness. Don't add any content to it. Just feel the openness in your open hands. Feel the cave-like openness into this potential, into this present moment presence. Pours the adoration, the glory, and the light. But first there must be a receptive openness. And when you're tempted to add something of your own thought or worries or concerns, remember you've left all that in the inn. And in this moment, in this place, it is sacred. Sacred meaning open, receptive, empty of all human thought. Open up a little bit wider. Open up and let your empty hands remind you that you hold the holy scene in your hands. You hold open the space for it. And let it be filled, not with your thought, but with the sacred presence of this moment. Open up. Open your capacity for light and energy and joy and healing and most of all love. Your open hands really are there to remind you of your open heart. The scene is truly unfolding. The birth, the awakening of something sacred and quiet and new and energized. Thank you. And so it is. So here we are. I upgrade my capacity for Christmas. Together, I upgrade my capacity for Christmas. Why? Because Christmas is only going to be the experience that you bring to it. You know, Charles Fillmore used to run retreats at Unity Village, then called Unity Farm, back in the 1920s. And at one of those retreats, he said something to them. I actually wrote it down. He said, you will never find anything of value here at Unity that you didn't already bring here yourself. You will never find anything of value in this church that you didn't bring yourself. You'll never find anything of value in Christmas that you didn't already bring yourself. You show up a little tiny cup, you're going to get filled with a little tiny amount. You splash in the ocean of the grandeur of the capacity of infinite infilling, and you will get that. It's really up to you, and that's what Christmas is about. It is an opening of the heart. It's an opening of the mind. And you are sitting here right now, and every now and moment, you make a choice. Am I shutting down a little bit? Am I opening up a little bit? And so, open up a little bit. You say, I can't open up all the way. Well, just open up a little bit. And a little bit more, and a little bit more. And if you have a little willingness, and a little more willingness, and a little more willingness, what happens? It gets a life of its own. This Christmas gets a life of its own. My Christmas has a life of its own. Together. My Christmas has a life of its own. My Christmas is a light of its own. Together. My Christmas has a light of its own. Christmas is light. Christmas is light. There's 100 times that Jesus he associated the word light with his message or himself. Light. I am the light of the world, and you are the light of the world. And you are, somebody once said, I'm just light with a little bit of silly putty around it. You are light. You're light expressing. But that light, the capacity for light, is limited by the wiring that you have. You can only carry enough juice, enough energy, enough vibration according to the wiring that you have. And it's like you got to rip out the 110 and put in the 220 volt. You want to plug in an oven, or you want to plug in something like a dryer. You've got to have the right wiring for it, or you blow out your circuits. You've got to. And we get these upgrades. This sounds very abstract, but it's very real. We get these upgrades in our lives when we open up to a greater capacity. One of the ways we do it, this is as strange as it could be, is when we open up to buying Christmas presents. You go out shopping this week, maybe. Some of you have already done it. Good for you. Don't gloat. We don't see the smirk, But the rest of us, we're all going to have to go out and buy some. And what do? You have to get into the quality of mind and heart that has the capacity to empathize with that person. What would delight that person? How would that person feel if they get this gift? And you have to be open to your intuition a little bit, just a little bit, just a little intuitive awareness. I am open up to my intuitive awareness. Together, I am open up to my intuitive awareness. So open up to that awareness that is ready to do what? To buy a present for another person, to increase the capacity for love. That will increase you. Even, certainly these epiphanies, and epiphany, although we're not to that holiday yet, epiphany is literally means the manifestation of light. And that light that shines, that is shining this Christmas, requires you to do something, to be open to it. And sometimes it comes unbidden. And sometimes it comes because somebody has compassion for another person. You have compassion for another person. Dr. Mary Allen was my mentor back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. She was a psychiatrist in Menlo Park, California, and she was really the mother of the past life therapy organization. She actually, the Association of Past Life Therapists was founded at one of her seminars, and she was also involved in all the human potential movement. Knew everybody. Some of her resume I couldn't even share with you. It's so out there. But she had come up with all these incredible processes, and we share them on Sunday mornings. Question and answer process, the agitated energy process, the opening up, and what is the good intentions process? All these openings, and she shared them with me. And here it was, just before Christmas. I was ready to move from California out to Florida, and I was meeting with her in her office, and she was holding the space for me as I did my soul work, and she had tears in her eyes, and she shared something she was working on. And I said, "Oh, would you like me to hold the space for you to do these processes that she came up with?" And she looked at me, and tears poured down her face. She said, "Nobody's ever offered that to me before." And so she started doing it, and she had these revelations came to her. It opened her up for her next capacity, for her next area of her life. And she said that energy came through so powerfully that she couldn't, and this is going to sound out there, but you're used to it by now, right? She said the energy came in so strongly that she couldn't think, couldn't formulate her normal thoughts until March. That she could function, but that was it. That it was like her old wiring had been removed and her new wiring came in, and then she had a greater capacity to do greater work. She wrote her book, Explorer's Odyssey, which we have in our bookstore. She did a lot of this great work. There's something in your life that wishes to be born in you, but it requires you to upgrade your capacity at whatever level you're at. Upgrade your capacity for what? For energy? For vibration, for light, for love, for something. And how do you do that? Well, sometimes it comes because somebody's open to you. I just sat there and offered. I didn't do anything. For about a year thereafter, she thought I'd done something to her. I hadn't. I just sat there with compassion. But who's to say that just sitting with compassion, with caring, with consideration for other people, for their feelings, for their needs, being conscious when you're buying Christmas presents, who's to say that that's not the most powerful thing that you can do? And open up a space for another person. And sometimes when these epiphanies come, when this energy comes in, our life is turned on its head and everything looks different. How many of you know about the angelologist Sophie Burnham? Raise your hand. Sophie Burnham, she's written a lot of books on angels. Nobody. Well, what the heck, I'll tell you about it anyway. Sophie Burnham wrote a lot of these books. She really began that push in the 1980s and 90s towards sharing about all that stuff. And she wrote in her book called The Book of Angels about what opened her up to the capacity of understanding and being able to move into that new aspect of her being where she was able to teach about these things. She was just sitting in an airport and something happened. She said, "I was in Costa Rica waiting in the shabby airport there, as all travelers and airports wait. I was sitting down and suddenly I saw ordinary people flaring with light, native women with their babies, tourists, American business people, soldiers, diplomats. Light began pouring off their faces, their shoulders, their hands. I was sitting in that grungy plastic Central American airport, trembling at the sight. The tears ran slowly down my cheeks in humility and gratitude. I put on my sunglasses so nobody could see. I started shaking at the goodness of people, the beauty of those luminous beings shining with that light." That's a pretty powerful experience, but you can have an epiphany. You can have an visitation of light, but you have to invite it. You have to be receptive to it. Sometimes it comes in anticipation of a difficult time. Sometimes it comes in anticipation of what we call a good time. But either way, you need to upgrade your capacity from 110 to 220 to have perhaps your old circuits replaced so that you can move into that newer awareness. Back in 1978, I didn't know I was going to go through a divorce. I didn't know that my dad was going to die. All I knew is I wanted to wash my car. And I took my car to a park. And there it was in Lee Summit, Missouri, James A. Reed Park, and I brought a bucket of soapy warm water in the back seat, and I was washing my car, and suddenly, I never did finish washing my car, because suddenly I looked down a path, and everything started glowing. It was just like this glowing. I was drawn down this path, and I started walking down the path, and everything just started glowing with this incredible light. And I started skipping down the path, and I got more and more filled with this light. I started giggling, and then somebody started walking down the path toward me, so I kind of cooled it and held it together until they got back. And then I started doing it again. I didn't understand what was going on. What was going on was I was being upgraded. I was being given more energy and light so that I can get through the situation that was coming in the next couple of months. So you say, well, I don't want to go through an epiphany. I don't want to go through a bad thing. It doesn't matter whether it's Sophie Burnham or Dr. Mary Allen who are ready to write something or open up to something new, or whether it's me to get some energy to get through a tough time. You need some energy right now. You need to open up your capacity to open up to a greater vibration, a greater consciousness. And how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, you get out of yourself. You know, we're all diamonds in the rough. That's really what you are. You're a diamond in the rough. And a diamond in the rough can't hold much light. If you try to shine light through a diamond in the rough, it can't really hold that light. It can't really generate that light or transmit that light. So what does it need? It needs a tumbler. It needs to be, you're a jewel. It needs to be polished. And what polishes you? Love. Love. You are a being of love. Divine love is flowing through you, tumbling you and polishing you to the capacity that you're open to it. Teilhard de Chardin, who was a great Catholic mystic, talked about how humanity was ready to move into a new capacity for love. He said, someday we will master the winds and the waves and tides and gravity, but then we will harness for God the energy of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, humanity will have discovered fire. So you can bring in the light. You can bring in the light. I often share, I put myself through college selling brushes door to door. Before I went up to every house, I visualized light in that house. And my teacher told me, my meditation teacher, don't do it to make a sale, because that's cheating. So just do the light. And then, if they didn't interested, my job was not to sell them brushes. My job was to transmit light in the neighborhood I was assigned to do it. Now think about that. What about your work? Maybe your job isn't to push the papers or sell the widgets or whatever it is you do. Maybe your job is to be that one who is assigned to shine the light in that environment. What a wonderful joy that is. What about that body you've been given? Maybe your job is to shine the light in the body you've been given. When I went to work in a church many years ago, about 30 years ago, and I was an associate minister, and I had a column in the church newsletter, and right next to my column was a column by a guy named Sidney Hennis. And I didn't know who he was, because I had an evening service, and he came to the morning service. So I asked somebody, who's Sidney Hennis? They said, oh, you don't know about Sidney Hennis? It turns out, had an ALS for 27 years. Now that's the same disease that Stephen Hawking has, and it generally, people have a 2-year longevity with that. 27 years, but unlike Stephen Hawking, who had, where it kind of got to a certain point and then just kind of stopped, his had reversed. He had gotten his diagnosis and he'd gone to the Unity minister in Menlo Park, California, and she shared with him, visualize light. Visualize light in the parts of your body that are affected by this in your brain. Visualize light. And he did it, and not only was he living 27 years later, but at the time that he visited her, he was in a wheelchair, he couldn't drive, and he could barely talk. And when I met him, 27 years later, he was driving a car, he was walking and talking, but kind of like he was a little drunk, kind of talk like this and walk like this. But he was continually, he said, getting better over the years. Now, I'm sharing this with you, and twice a year, the Stanford Medical School would have him speak to the students and talk about his experience. They couldn't explain it. You can't explain it, I can't explain it, but it's a visualization, a visitation of light. It is an epiphany. You can focus the light, visualize the light, shine the light, take that light and put it forth into your world. How can you shine forth the light in your world? Well, you decide. You decide. We are, Jesus said, you are the light of the world. We are those beings of light. But what is that light? There's a wonderful quote from the Gospel of Thomas, and Jesus defines light not only in scientific terms, but in the terms that was only found in their culture or anywhere else in the writings of Plato. So he obviously knew about Greek metaphysics. Jesus said, if they ask you, where are you from? Tell them, we came from the light. We came from that place where that light gave birth to itself and then expressed through its own image. And if they ask you, are you that light? Tell them, we are its children, chosen by God. And then if they ask you for a sign of that light of God and you tell them, it is a movement and a rest. That came from Plato. A movement and a rest. A waveform, like light. A movement and a rest. And also in our lives, we have to move and we've also got to rest. At Christmas time, we do a lot of moving, not a lot of resting. And I'm talking about resting, not in the sense of necessarily taking a nap, although that's a good thing. And it could be meditating, it could be praying, but it could also be opening up to the childlike wonder of what? Of what? The joy of the season? What is your favorite Christmas movie or cartoon? Somebody just start saying them. Carrie Christmas Carol.
It's a Wonderful Life.
What's a Wonderful Life? Rudolph. I want to be a dentist. Yeah, Rudolph. What else? Christmas Story. So all these things. Take the time. Movement and a rest. A rest. A conscious rest. A movement and a rest. And what does that do? It generates the light in you. You cannot generate the light. You do not have capacity for the light unless you're willing to express a movement and a rest. And so how do you do that? How do you do that? That light that shines in you. You are created out of light. You are created out of the light of the initial creative urge and impulse of this universe. The cosmologist, Brian Swim, and he also was teaching it years ago at Holy Names University, a Catholic school in Oakland, until they got too conservative for him. But he was teaching this, and he said these words. I wrote it down when I heard him say it. You come out of the energy that gave birth to this universe. It is your beginning. You came out of the fire that fashioned the galaxies. It is alive within you. My body is the universe, and the universe is my body. And this is, cosmology. It's a little bit deep, right? We're talking about something that's deep, right? It's a stretch, right? But it really hits us where we live, because what it speaks to is that there's an original goodness, a light inside of you that is covered over by your everyday experiences, your thoughts, your false beliefs and everything. And as you uncover it, it comes to life and comes alive within you. Eknath said, goodness is our real core. And if that's true, if goodness that can never be hidden, but never taken away, is our core, then goodness is not something that we have to get. We do not have to figure out how to make ourselves good. All we have to do is to remove what already is covering the goodness that's already there. You have an original goodness in you. You have an original goodness in you. I remember when I was doing a christening, and I wasn't a family from our church. Most of the christenings I do aren't from people from the church. They come in here because they can't do it in their original church for whatever reason. And so maybe they're in a second marriage or something. So I end up playing in the part, But sometimes they're kind of surprised at what I say, because it isn't what they would have gotten where they came from. And so one time I was sharing about this baby does not need us to christen it to be okay. It's a good thing to christen a baby. It blesses the baby. It's a very good and significant thing. But the baby does not need it because the baby's already good. Wow, the guy came up to me afterwards and he was really open. He was not being challenging. He was very nice. But he said, what is this about the baby already being good? So you don't believe in original sin? I said, Jesus didn't believe in original sin. That came in with Augustine. That came in like a couple hundred years later. That's not part of... You'll never find a rabbi who teaches that. And it came out of Judaism, supposedly, and they don't believe in it. So this wasn't part of their culture. The idea that we're basically good at heart, it was a part of the early church history. But then there was a theological battle between Augustine's followers and Pelagius' followers. And Pelagius taught original blessing and Augustine taught original sin. And the emperor liked the idea of original sin because it meant that they were sinful and they needed an emperor to rule over them. So that's where all that came from. Does that challenge you? It's some tough stuff. He was real open. He said, oh, I feel like you've taken a weight off of me. It's taken me off my back. But, okay, getting back to this now moment where this energy and this light is trying to push through you, trying to burst something, whether it's a book or getting through a difficult time or something, that original something that's inside of you, the goodness of God that's already inside of you, that is pushing out within you and beyond, is that goodness. That goodness is calling you, and it's your innate something. You know, Christmas Eve candlelighting service, we don't do a lot of ceremonial stuff in Unity. This time of year we kind of do, but we don't do a lot of that. But that's so powerful because you get to see visually the chain reaction of every person's light lighting everyone else's light. And that's what's happening in the world today. The world is on the brink of a great shining forth of light. People say, but the world? I mean, I watch TV. I know that what's going on in the world. Well, I read something by an historian, and it was great. He went and quantified violence and hunger and starvation and wars and said that the year 2015 was the best year in the history of humanity. Do you believe that? I bet you hardly anybody in this room believes that. But it's quantifiable. It is true. You say, why do I hear about this other stuff? Because communication's so good. You know, the truth is that the light is shining in the darkness. It says in the first chapter of John, and the darkness has never overcome it. Remember it said the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never put it out. The darkness has never overcome it. It also means the darkness never understood it. The darkness can't figure it out. The literal word is it cannot grasp it. So the light is always shining. And what does Eckhart Tolle say? The problem is that the darkness is noisier than the light, so we pay attention to it. But the light is quiet. It's always shining. It's building. And there's less hunger. There's less starvation. There are per capita fewer wars. There are better conditions. There's greater education, more equality, less slavery than there's ever been in the history of the world. And when are we going to celebrate it? Well, we celebrate it now. We celebrate it by opening our hearts to our capacity to greater wonder. You say, but there's so much injustice. Somebody's got to do something about it. Don't give me this Pollyanna stuff, Greg. Well, the truth is that it gives us a strength and an empowerment to be able to make a difference and to make the changes that are out there that we need to make, that are ours to make, when we know that the light is building, the light is growing. The light is growing in your life. You have a consciousness right now that you've never had before. You say, I don't always feel like it. Get up in the morning, I'm not so sure. But you have grown. You're not that person you were 5 years ago. You aren't that person you were 10 years ago. You've grown into a greater and greater capacity. And your wiring is ready to be rewired now. Are you ready to do this Christmas time? Are you ready to use the energy of this week in a very real sense to open you up to a greater capacity to do good in the world and to experience more of your own divinity? I'm ready. Hope you come on Christmas Eve if you can. Bring tell some of your Catholic friends to come here before they go to Mass. Bring your, but get into the Spirit, however you can do it. And remember that light is a movement and a rest. So have that rest. Have that rest. So let's open up. This is the rest part of the movement and the rest. The light that is shining in you. So just, again, open your heart, open your mind, open your hands. Remember that manger scene, that stable scene is in your hands. The receptivity in your heart. And into an open space. That space of the rest. Into that quietness without human thought. The energy is pouring. Pouring. Lifting up. Open up a little more. Open up a little more. The sign of light is a movement and a rest. We have rested, and now we're going to move into our Christmas time. Thank you, God, and so it is. So, we're going to give in the spirit of light and receive in the spirit of light. This is our offering time. So I give in the spirit of light and I receive in the spirit of light. Together. I give in the spirit of light and I receive in the spirit of light. And silently. And again aloud together. I give in the spirit of light and I receive in the spirit of light. And so it is. Amen.